It's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis, this is Red Eye Radio.
And good morning, good evening, and welcome on in to Red Eye Radio. Always appreciate the opportunity to fill in, and Gary and Eric, have no fear. They will return Sunday night, Monday morning. The news does continue, and again, the phone number remains 866-90 Red Eye. I host a morning show in Nashville, Tennessee on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Tune in if you'd like. We're also on YouTube, all the streaming apps as well. It's a very busy news night, and so I just want to kind of get right to it. There was a redistricting effort in Indiana. The Republicans were trying to redistrict out a couple of Democrat seats, and so we're going to start there. But we also have a lot of other things to talk about tonight, including the Maryland man, and I'm saying Maryland man, putting that in air quotes, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the MS-13 gang member, and now he has, believe it or not, been released. That's right. This is a guy, Kilmar Abrego Garcia. The media tried very hard to call him Maryland man, but authorities within the Trump administration know him as an illegal alien, a member of MS-13 and Tren de Aragua, a human trafficker here in my state of Tennessee. He was actually caught here in Tennessee smuggling a bunch of illegals. The Biden administration, basically, they called the Biden administration at the time, and the Biden administration said, basically, let him go. That is all on video. He is a wife beater. His wife actually filed orders of protection against him. And so there's a whole lot more, but this is, stop me when you've heard this before. This is yet another activist judge. So we do have that for you as well. We have all the latest in Venezuela. And yes, we are going to talk about the economy as well. Jasmine Crockett, I don't know if she knew what she was getting into when she announced that she was running for the Senate, but a word of caution from the humble host. So we have a lot of stories to get to. First of all, though, let's get to what happened in Indiana. This is a very big deal, a big redistricting effort. It did fail. The Republicans are trying to do this in the Hoosier state. So right now in Indiana, you have 7 Republicans and a couple of Democrats as well in Congress, and Republicans were trying to gerrymander those 2 Democrat seats out. Unfortunately, that effort failed. The state legislature voted against it with a bunch of Republicans, believe it or not, a bunch of Republicans voting against the gerrymandering. Now, a lot of people are calling for these folks to be primaried. We'll have to wait and see what happens. Donald Trump was asked about this, and as you can imagine, he was not real happy about it, and he called out the Indiana Senate President Pro Tem, a guy by the name of Roderick Bray, and yeah, President Trump not happy.
It's funny because I won Indiana all 3 times by a landslide, and I wasn't working on it very hard. Would have been nice. I think we would have picked up 2 seats if we did that. You had one gentleman, the head of the Senate, I guess, Bray, whatever his name is. I heard he was against it. He'll probably lose his next primary, whenever that is. I hope he does, but because he's done a tremendous disservice. I mean, think of it. It's a great place. I love the people there. They love me. We won in a landslide all 3 times. Got tremendous votes. I got record votes. And then there's no reason for doing that. And the Democrats do it to us, so I can't imagine that they do it. But I wasn't very much involved. But there's a man named Bray, as head of the Senate. Was that Bray? Is that the name, Bray? I mean, I'm sure that whenever his primary is, it's, I think, in 2 years, but I'm sure he'll go down. He'll go down. I'll certainly support anybody that wants to go against him.
So that is President Trump. Here is the official part of the story. The Indiana Senate's 31-19 vote to kill the redistricting bill marks a major setback in Trump's mid-decade gerrymandering strategy for Republicans to hold on to control of the House in the 2026 midterm elections. The bill sought to create 2 new Republican districts, which would have given the GOP control of all 9 of the state's congressional districts. So this is pretty surprising to me. You had 21 Republicans who voted against the bill in Indiana. 19 Republicans voted for it. All of the Democrats, of course, as you can imagine, voted against it. And ultimately, it is the Republicans in Congress who are the big losers here. And, of course, in my opinion, the good people of Indiana. And so you do have the Republicans now, and at the national level, they are responding to all of this. And as you can imagine, they're not happy. Part of what they're trying to do, though, is they are trying to downplay this loss. President Trump, you just heard him there, and he sort of sounded, well, you know, you win some and you lose some, and that is basically the opinion of one House Speaker Mike Johnson.
Are you worried about Trump's grip on power after Indiana? Do you think it shows he's a lame duck?
Not at all. We're
Is
not
he a lame
worried
duck?
about- No, he is not a lame duck. He's the most powerful president of this generation and many others. We have a lot more work to do together. The outcome in Indiana is inconsequential to that. We
He
are
put a
going to
major
win the
pressure
midterms.
campaign.
No, he did. No. He did not put in major pressure campaign for it. He let his opinion be known, as he does on everything, all the time, all day long. We win some, we lose some. It is no indication whatsoever about what's going to happen next year in the midterm elections. We are excited about that. We have a great campaign to run. We go forward regardless of how each one of these states comes out. We're going to win on whatever maps are presented. So I'm very bullish. I'm more bullish today than I was yesterday, and you'll see that. And you guys underestimate us. You'll see that.
Sir,
So that that is Mike Johnson. All right, so I'm just gonna tell you, and I try to be a straight shooter, but the Republicans did have a pretty substantial, actually, campaign there in the state of Indiana. As a matter of fact, they sent J.D. Vance there not once but twice. It is interesting, though, because you had 21 Republicans who voted against the bill. I'm surprised by that. 21 Republicans. 19 Republicans, again, did vote for it. All the Democrats, again, as I said, voted against it. But, you know, this is, and a lot of people are calling this war as we head into the midterm elections. You know, I'm sure that you know that the Democrats have been gerrymandering for years. There are states where you have, and I'll tell you the numbers in a second, but there are states that have pretty substantial Republican support, yet no representation in Congress thanks to the gerrymandering of the Democrats. Now, this has been a massive debate, as you can imagine, going on in the Hoosier state, and make no mistake, this is a big loss with the current makeup of the House. So remember, one of the state senators, and I don't know if you remember this story, one of the state senators there in Indiana, a guy by the name of, I may be butchering his name, Michael Bohacek or Bohacek, whatever, but he said that he would not be supporting President Trump because he has a child who has intellectual disabilities. Remember when Donald Trump used the word retarded to describe Tim Walz? And so he said that he would basically, because the president said that, he would not be supporting the gerrymandering effort. Now, I'm just going to say this. This guy can do whatever it is that he wants to do. But I think if these folks, if they represent Republicans, I'm just a little aghast. If they represent a Republican district, I'm a little aghast at how they would not vote with Donald Trump on this and vote with J.D. Vance on this, and especially this guy, Chris Garton. You know, this guy, the Indiana Senate Majority Leader, his name is Chris Garton, and this is the level. I'm just going to play this for you. This is the level of dialogue, the level of fire that was happening in the Indiana Senate as they were debating this whole thing.
Some will say these maps are political. Let me be clear. You're damn right they are. Political policy is political. Safe streets are political. Look at Indianapolis. Affordable electricity is political. A drug-free Indiana is political. Peace in the Middle East is political. I dealt with it firsthand. If drawing a map that secures 2 more seats for the Republican Party means that we continue to see overdose deaths drop by 20%, then I'll draw that map every single day of the week and twice on Sunday.
I mean, the guy makes a lot of sense. I mean, listen, we could talk about affordability all day long, and it is a major issue. It is the economy, stupid. But the president, and I'm going to get into the economy here in a little bit, the president does have some wins as it relates to affordability. I'm going to get into that. But with what the Indiana Senate Majority Leader Chris Garton says about the Trump wins, the president does have wins. I mean, say what you will about the president taking out those narco-terrorist speedboats, but ultimately he is protecting Americans, and there has been polling that has shown that the American people do support Donald Trump in those efforts. We'll talk about the president taking over that Venezuelan oil tanker coming up here during the radio broadcast as well here on Red Eye Radio. But you talk about the border. You talk about crime. You talk about the deportation efforts. You talk about all the things that Donald Trump is trying to do to protect the American people. And all he's asking for is a little bit of help. And these Republicans in the state of Indiana basically selling out the president, in my estimation. Now, I got to tell you, and I love the passion of this Indiana Senate Majority Leader Chris Garton. I love the passion, and he is bringing facts and truth.
If drawing a map means that we'll continue to see a 93% drop in illegal immigration, then I'll sign it with a smile on my face. We're not here to be neutral arbiters of decline. We're here to be active agents of American greatness. So I ask you.
Yep. So he was asking the state Senate, you need to redraw these lines. You need to redistrict. You need to gerrymander. But, you know, again, as I've been telling you, it did fail in the state of Indiana. Very disappointing. I did find it interesting. J.D. Vance. I told you that the president and J.D. Vance and a lot of Republicans, there was a big pressure campaign to get this done. I just played you an example of that audio. J.D. Vance is now targeting Indiana Senate Leader Rod Bray for lying to his face. Apparently, Bray, and this is a quote, consistently told the Trump administration he would not fight redistricting while simultaneously whipping his members against it. J.D. Vance says that level of dishonesty cannot be rewarded, and the Indiana GOP needs to choose a side. Well, they did. You know, in reading about all of this, I think that there was some in the state of Indiana that did not actually appreciate the pressure campaign. Didn't appreciate it at all. So now when you talk about, and listen, Donald Trump, that is a man who knows how to pressure. I'm just saying. But I do feel like, and I don't know how the people of Indiana feel about all of this. Maybe there was some polling that showed that the people of Indiana did not want this gerrymandering mid-decade. But if you're keeping score, in Texas, just for the gerrymandering score, in Texas, Republicans got 5 seats. In California, they got 5 seats. Missouri, 1 seat for the Republicans. North Carolina, 1 seat for Republicans. I should say in California, Democrats got 5 seats. I think I said that. In North Carolina, they got 1 seat for Republicans. Failures to gerrymander in Ohio, Kansas, and as I just told you, Indiana. So right now, the Republicans, they are up 2 in the gerrymandering game. Florida is still in play. That would be plus up to 2 to 4. Louisiana could get a couple of Republican seats as well if they gerrymander in that state. Louisiana, again, they could get 2 Republican seats. Virginia will probably eventually do it, and that would leave Virginia possibly with no Republican representation in the House, but that won't be ready by 2026. You've got Kansas, Maryland, New York, and Illinois. Maryland, New York, and Illinois, of course, very Democrat-leaning states. They're all still working through the possibilities. So as far as the midterms go, Polling for Donald Trump has been slightly up since he has been focused on affordability. Messaging has been pretty consistent over the last couple of weeks, although not as sharp as it needs to be. But here is some good news. A new Reuters poll shows that voters over 50 still favor Republicans 46 to 38%. Under 50 prefer Democrats 42 to 31%. But it is those older Republican voters who will come out in the midterm elections. So you got to talk about that as well. Now, coming up, we will talk about some of those states just very briefly, because I think that it has been mentioned many times before. But a meme has been floating around about the effectiveness of the gerrymandering of the Democrats. And so we're going to talk about this. And also some terrific reaction from Scott Jennings. He was on CNN and talking about how the Republicans really need to wake up because politically we are absolutely in a war. And I've got those stories straight ahead. My name is Dan Mandis. This is Red Eye Radio.
Brought to you by Hot Shot Secret.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at JJ Keller. When driving, you need to manage the space around your vehicle so that there's enough space to allow you to adjust when traffic conditions change. The space ahead of your vehicle is the most important. One rule of thumb is to allow at least 1 second for each 10 feet of vehicle length at speeds below 40 miles per hour. At greater speeds, add an additional second. It's impossible to keep other drivers from tailgating you, but there are some things you can do to make it safer, such as increasing your following distance, avoiding quick lane changes, and slowing down. There are also several things you should do to ensure that there is plenty of space between the side of your vehicle and other vehicles. Don't hug the center line, and avoid traveling alongside other vehicles in strong winds. This tip was brought to you by JJ Keller and Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE. All right, real quick. This meme going around. Gerrymandering. Massachusetts, 36% Republican support, 0 seats in the House of Representatives. Connecticut, 42% Republican, 0 seats. You're talking about New Mexico, 46% Republican, 0 seats. Rhode Island, 42% Republican, 0 seats, and it goes on. This is what Scott Jennings said on CNN just a couple of hours ago.
Do you think Governor Pritzker should stand down on his efforts, given these Republicans stood up to Trump?
Absolutely not.
Us discussing this Indiana situation and to see a Democratic debating partner tonight cheer on Governor Pritzker and his continued redistricting, gerrymandering efforts just goes to show you that Republicans are rookies when it comes to redistricting. We are nowhere near as practiced or ruthless when it comes to redistricting as these Democrats. You get state after state after state where Republicans have virtually no representation in Congress at all. Illinois is already one of the most, if not the most, gerrymandered state in the nation. So make no mistake, gerrymandering is a Democratic skill set. Republicans are still pikers when it comes to this. But I got to tell you, what you heard tonight is what they're going to do. They're ruthless. Democrats have shut down the government. They've told the military to stop following orders. They're trying to redraw maps. This is the future with Democrats, a ruthless kind of politics, and Republicans better wake up to it.
I mean, he's absolutely right. I mean, somebody tell me where Scott Jennings is wrong. He's not. And I'm here to tell you, friends, if and when the Democrats get the House of Representatives in the midterm elections, you know what's going to happen next. You know that the impeachment proceedings will begin. They're already going after Pete Hegseth, and they're already going after RFK Jr. as well. So there's a lot at stake. And so for these Republicans in Indiana, is it a setback? Yes. Is it bad for conservatives? Yes. Is it bad for the state of Indiana and America? Yes. We'll return next.
happy holidays. Have some eggnog. Red Eye Radio.
Don't mind if I do. It's Red Eye Radio. My name is Dan Mandis, in for Gary and Eric. By the way, tonight I have activated my text line that I use for my morning show on Super Talk 99.7 in Nashville. So if you don't want to call, 866-90-RED-EYE, totally cool. You can always text me, 615-737-9986, and I always love getting text messages from all across the country. Now, a big battle over the economy in the Capitol building today, in the White House, actually. I want to say this about that. I want to say this about the economy. There are times when how you interpret numbers depends on your political proclivities, right? So if you are pro-Trump, then there more than likely are numbers that will help you talk about some of the things that Donald Trump has succeeded at. And if you are a Donald Trump, I don't know, hater or whatever, like the Democrats, then you will have some facts and some figures and some data that will show that Donald Trump is failing. And then there's, the straight shooters. I try to be a straight shooter. Gary and Eric certainly straight shooters when it comes to the economy. But this exchange went viral today as CNN's Caitlin Collins and Caroline Levitt got into it over the state of inflation. Listen to this.
Signals in terms of what that looks like. But on inflation is down from where it was. As measured by the overall CPI, it has slowed to an average 2.5% pace. This is down from what the president inherited. The president inherited 2.9% in January. Today it's at about 2.5%. So we're trending in the right direction with more to come. And I would remind you, when President Trump left office in his first term, inflation was 1.7%. And the previous administration jacked it up to a record high 9%. So again, in 10 months, the president has clawed us out of this hole. He's kept it low at 2.5%, and we believe that number is going to continue to decline, especially as energy and oil prices continue to decline as well.
Maybe it wasn't high under Biden. They're just saying it's not.
Well, nobody reported on it being high under Biden. My predecessor was standing at this podium, but now you want to ask me a lot of questions about it, which I'm happy to answer. But I will just add, there's a lot more scrutiny on this issue from this press corps than there was. Well, and the previous administration said that too. My predecessor stood up at this podium and she said inflation doesn't exist. She said the border was secure. And people like you just took her at her word. And those were two utter lies. Everything I'm telling you is the truth backed by real factual data. And you just don't want to report on it because you want to push untrue narratives about the president.
So that is Caroline Levitt. And there's a lot of numbers being thrown around. And a lot of this, again, is being politicized. So the CPI, remember, core inflation does not include food and energy, which are volatile. Back in March, April, and May was indeed around 2.4, 2.5%. Back in September, it was at 3%, and now here in December, it's around 2.9%. But she's saying the average. So I'm assuming that if you average all of the months that Donald Trump has been in office, she is getting an average somewhere around 2.5, 2.8, 2.9%, whatever. I tried to make the math work. I couldn't, but whatever figure she's using, that's her story, and she's sticking to it. That's fine. There's a lot of ways to measure the economy, but the bottom line is this. Affordability is the issue. So, again, if you're pro-Trump, and I am pro-Trump, but I'm also not Pollyannish when it comes to the economy. There's always good economic news out there. There's always bad economic news that is out there. But bottom line, right now, the Fed has cut rates. As far as jobs go, we have seen good job growth with American-born workers actually working. The Fed is predicting strong GDP growth for 2026. Gas prices are at a 4-year low. Real wages are up. That is wages versus inflation. In other words, inflation might be up, but wages are rising beyond inflation, just a tick. But that's good. And, of course, we still have a lot of pro-economic factors and pro-economic deregulation that is going to be happening in 2026. Tax breaks, no tax on tips, all of those things are coming in 2026. So there's a lot of good news on the horizon. I think we've got a running start. I think we've got a real good running start, sprinting start into 2026 with gas prices being at a 4-year low. So personally, I'm not really dour or sour on the economy at all. I'm actually, and again, I maybe I'm being Pollyannish. I don't think that I am. But I am excited about what 2026 is going to bring. The other thing, and she's absolutely right, it goes without saying, and Gary and Eric say it all the time. I get that people are concerned about the economy. I'm concerned about the economy. I'm concerned about affordability for personal reasons. But here's the thing. It is nowhere near as bad as it was under Biden, which is exactly what Caroline Leavitt is saying. I get that Donald Trump has been in office for almost a year. I think, 11 months and a week? And so I get the further away we get from Joe Biden, the more Donald Trump has got to take accountability for the economy, and he is, which is why he is now hyper-focused on affordability. But there is a difference. There is a difference between blaming Biden and just reminding the American people what happened under the reign of Joe Biden. You can remind the American people where affordability was during the Biden administration with that so refreshing 9.1% inflation and those $4 to $5 gas prices. So just because Caroline Leavitt, because people are saying, she's blaming Biden again, she's really not. She's just reminding the people that are hating on Trump's economy right now how bad it was under Joe Biden. Almost like as a perspective reminder. Hey, just remember, and Lord knows what it would be if Kamala Harris or Joe Biden had won the election. So there's a lot of positive things that are going on. I think that we have a great start heading into 2026. We'll have to see ultimately what the tax breaks and the deregulation in the big, beautiful bill ultimately does. We still don't know what the decision is going to be on tariffs. We'll have to wait and see what the Supreme Court says. But the president, I said earlier that his messaging on the economy has been, it has not, I love President Trump, but I'm going to criticize him when I have to. So he said this regarding pencils. I didn't really get exactly what he was saying.
You can give up certain products. You can give up pencils. Because under the China policy, every child can get 37 pencils. They only need one or two. They don't need that many. But you always need steel. You don't need $37 for your daughter. 2 or 3 is nice, but you don't need $37.
So the president has always actually said that, and so that didn't go over too well, of course. He's been saying this, by the way, for a long time in various interviews and speeches. And basically what he is saying is that prices have been artificially low because we have all of these products that are made in China, and they are imported into America, exported from China, and they come into America. And so what he is saying is that we have all of these things that are made in China. They come here, and ultimately, because of that bulk and the junk, because, a lot of these products are not made well. I have no idea about pencils, but we have these things that are made here, and they are going to be better made. They might be more expensive, but what Donald Trump is saying is that it'll be better for everyone. And, I've done this poll before 1 million times in my many years of talk radio. Would you be willing to pay more for products made in America? And Donald Trump apparently is betting on that. And so we'll have to see how this whole thing fleshes out with the Supreme Court and where they go with tariffs. I'm sure that Donald Trump and Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, I'm sure that they have a plan in case the Supreme Court comes back against Donald Trump, and if the Supreme Court says that tariffs are unconstitutional, then they're going to have to pivot, and they're going to have to pivot fast. But ultimately, the question would be, would you pay more money for products made here in America, and certainly if they're built better? This is what Caroline Leavitt had to say about all that.
As the president has said it is, then why is he telling parents 2 weeks before Christmas that they should only buy 2 or 3 dolls for their children?
Look, what the president is saying is that if we want products made right here in America, if we want them to be made from American small businesses, which is a large part of the reason the president has effectively implemented tariffs, then we're going to have better quality products right here in the United States. Maybe you'll pay $1 or $2 more, but you will get better quality, and you'll be supporting your fellow Americans by buying American, and that's what the president was saying. Again, with respect to affordability, every economic metric, Caitlin, and I wish you would report more on it, does in fact show that the economy is getting better and brighter than where it was under the previous administration. I will repeat, inflation as measured by the overall CPI has slowed to an average 2.5% pace. Real wages are increasing, roughly $1,200 for the average worker. Gas prices are down in almost every single state across the country. Again, in 22 states, it's below $2.75. You look at the tax cuts, those are going to go into effect next year. So the best is yet to come. The president is digging our country out of the economic hole that the previous administration put us in, and that's what he's talking about.
There's a lot of folks, by the way, and this is sad but true, there's a lot of folks who will certainly benefit from the lowering of interest rates. If you had to put, and a lot of people did, if you had to put a bunch of things on credit card, for example, during the Biden administration, a lot of people maxed out their credit cards, unfortunately, trying to pay for gasoline, which was up, way up, $4 or $5 a gallon. We could talk about the cost of groceries during that time. The cost of everything was skyrocketing. And so when I talk about what is going on with the economy, and you compare, Donald Trump's economy, which was good in his first term, but compared to Joe Biden, that's all I'm saying is, man, you have got to understand how much, and I hate to say this, but how much worse it could have been under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. If that first term was any indicator, and had Trump not won the election, Lord knows where we would be at right now. So there's a lot of different ways to look at all of this. But to me, certainly, I believe that the president is on the right track. I think it takes a long time to, turn this whole ship around, this massive boat that is the economy. And so I am looking forward to 2026. I believe that we are headed for better days once January hits, and once all of those various deregulation, the tax benefits, and all that stuff ultimately comes into play. And we'll have to see how the American people respond to that heading into the midterm elections. It is about affordability. One of the things that I've been saying on my local show on Super Talk 99.7 in Nashville, if you'd like to listen, 6 to 10 Eastern time, you can find us all over the place. And one of the things that I've been saying is that the Democrats may rue the day when they said that affordability was going to be the big issue. They are bringing affordability to the forefront. This is something they've been hammering over and over again. And if the economy ends up improving the way that I believe that it's going to improve, and again, if gas prices continue to remain at that 4-year low, then I believe a lot of other things will also, the prices will also start to go down. And so I think that if the president can continue to hammer the message of affordability himself and talk about the wins like Caroline Leavitt is, then that is going to be good for the midterm elections. And by the way, again, I was telling you earlier in the broadcast that a new Reuters poll shows that because the older voters are still leaning Republican, that bodes well for the Republicans in the midterm elections. But we'll have to see how the whole thing shakes out. My name is Dan Mandis. We'll return next on Red Eye Radio.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
Red Eye Radio, the phone number, 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. My name is Dan Mandis. My text line from my morning show in Nashville, Tennessee is also activated, 615-737-9986, 615-737-9986. A lot of folks chiming in on Caitlin Collins, the battle between Caitlin Collins and Caroline Leavitt as far as the economy goes. And a lot of really interesting comments. I'm going to talk about those and a whole lot more straight ahead. It is Red Eye Radio.
Top of the hour news is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis. This is Red Eye Radio.
And good morning, good evening, and hope you are doing well. And welcome on into Red Eye Radio. And my name indeed is Dan Mandis. I host a morning show in Nashville, Tennessee, Super Talk, 99.7 WTN, 6 to 10 Eastern Time. Listen to me, watch me on YouTube as we do our radio broadcast every single morning. The phone number remains 866-90-RED-EYE. I've also activated my text line. If you'd like to text into the show, if you don't want to call, 615-737-9986. Always enjoy getting text messages from places like Illinois and Florida and California and all points in between. I'm curious about something. You know, there's this story regarding Kristi Noem and this war veteran who was, and I'm going to air quote this. I'm going to give you the entire story because I think there's some hijinks and shenanigans going on with the media on this story regarding this war veteran that was supposedly deported by the Trump administration. I'm going to play you this audio. This is during testimony today, Kristi Noem, and she is being pressed about the Trump administration deporting this guy from, I guess, South Korea. His name is Se-Jun Park. And so you've got the Democrat who is saying that we deported him. Now, the reality is that he self-deported to South Korea, but even that's not the full story. So this is what happened earlier. I guess this was on Thursday. Kristi Noem testifying about illegal immigration and deportations.
How many United States military veterans have you deported?
Sir, we have not deported U.S. citizens or military veterans.
I don't believe you served in the military. I haven't either, but I think you and I can agree that as Americans, we owe everything to those who have served our country in uniform, particularly those who have served in combat. Do you agree with that?
Sir, I believe that people that are in this United States that are citizens have legal status here.
Madam Secretary, we are joined on Zoom by a gentleman named Se-Jun Park. He is a United States Army combat veteran who was shot twice while serving our country in Panama in 1989.
Now, this is Seth Magaziner, whatever, Democrat out of Rhode Island. And so they've got Se-Jun Park. I guess that's on a tablet. And so an aide is holding up the tablet, and you see over Magaziner's right shoulder, dude's on like a tablet. And he's just sitting there, I guess, looking at Kristi Noem. This whole thing is so theatrical. But I'm going to make a bigger point in a second that is going to completely obliterate the Democrats and their pearl clutching over this story.
Like many veterans, he struggled with PTSD and substance abuse after his service. He was arrested in the 1990s for some minor drug offenses, nothing serious. He never hurt anyone besides himself, and he's been clean and sober for 14 years. He is a combat veteran, a Purple Heart recipient. He has sacrificed more for this country than most people ever have. Earlier this year, you deported him to Korea, a country he hasn't lived in since he was 7 years old.
Now, you've got all these people screaming about how this guy actually, Kristi Noem, did not deport him. He self-deported. But I'm going to give you the rest of the story. He self-deported because he was under the threat of deportation. But there's still more to the story. Listen.
Will you join me in thanking Mr. Park for his service to our country?
Sir, I'm grateful for every single person that has served our country and follows our laws.
Can you please tell Mr. Park why you deported him?
Every one of them needs to be enforced.
But you understand that many veterans struggle with PTSD, many veterans struggle with substance abuse challenges. This man took 2 bullets for our country. You have broad authority, by the way, as Secretary, to issue humanitarian parole, to do deferred action. Will you commit to at least looking at Mr. Park's case to see if you can help him find a pathway back to this country that he sacrificed so much for?
I will absolutely look at his case, but I want you to remember that
Madam Secretary, the man...
Yeah, and then you'll notice he just bulldozes right over Kristi Noem as she's trying to make whatever point that she wanted to make. But here's a few things. Legal proceedings against this guy in 2010. An immigration judge issued a removal order based on his drug convictions in 2010, revoking his green card under laws classifying certain offenses as deportable. Yes, even nonviolent ones for non-citizens. That case originated under Obama. And yet nothing happened all these years. This guy could have taken care of the situation one way or another. He chose not to. I appreciate his service. I certainly do appreciate his service. But this happened in 2010, where this Obama administration, under this immigration judge and the Obama administration, they wanted him deported. They revoked his green card under laws, again, classifying certain offenses as deportable. And so all of this was going on. The Trump administration comes in, and their mass deportation begins. And this guy, he had committed crimes. Under Obama, he was supposed to be deported. They revoked his green card. He chose not to take care of it. He could have taken care of it under Biden's administration. Because Biden, I'm sure, would have just blown the whole thing away, just blown it off. Given him that green card back and done whatever it was that he needed to do. But he chose not to act on what happened in 2010, and he could have. Doesn't mean that I don't appreciate this guy's service, but how about a little perspective from the Democrats? That's number one. Number two, can I just ask this question? You notice how the Democrats are doing everything that they possibly can to, bring up cases like, this war veteran from South Korea. But here's the thing. Why is it they don't ever bring up in the House of Representatives, the Democrats, why don't they ever bring up the guys that were not deported? The illegal alien gang members who were convicted of things like assault, battery, robbery, things like that. These sanctuary cities that choose not to cooperate with ICE to get these bad hombres out of here. They're hyperventilating and pearl clutching over, this guy who is now in South Korea of being, air quoting, deported. Well, he did self-deport after his inaction when he chose not to take care of business regarding the revoking of his green card under Obama. But they never seem to want to talk about the bad hombres who have not been deported. The bad hombres that have stayed in this country or were deported and snuck back in. They never want to talk about that. No, they just want to talk about, the guys that were, in their estimation, unfairly deported. Now, if I'm Kristi Noem, I look at this guy's case and I say, okay, Se-Jun Park, let's look at your situation and see if you really did deserve to be deported. Now, I could be a hard A and say, yeah, he didn't take care of business, then off he goes. He's got an ill mother and a family here in America. But he did self-deport. I misspoke. He was self-deported. He self-deported. He did not deport. He was not deported. He self-deported. But if Kristi Noem wants to look at it, she certainly can. But as I'm looking at all of this political theater, the theatrics, the big drama of this guy being pulled up on a tablet in the middle of this hearing in Washington, D.C., Kristi Noem, Madam Secretary, will you thank this man for his service? I mean, it's so dumb. She wants to look at this after he self-deported. She can certainly do that. But to me, the bigger issue is it's the best way to put this. They're not very consistent, these Democrats. They're just not. Because they won't say a word about a, Venezuelan gang member who came in here under Biden, has raped 4 women, and is still here in America, and ICE had a detainer on him, and they let him go, right? How many times do we hear those stories? We hear those stories all the time. To be perfectly honest, there was a time in this country under Joe Biden where it was the norm that bad hombres like that would be allowed to stay in this country under Joe Biden. And nobody batted an eye on the left. Nobody batted an eye in the media. Nobody cared. Republicans cared. Talk show hosts cared. Gary and Eric cared. I care. Most of you care. But the Democrats in the media could give a crap about people like Laken Riley. People that were murdered by illegal aliens into this country and allowed to stay in this country under Joe Biden. A lot of these folks that snuck in under Joe Biden, they were deported under Donald Trump. Hell, they could have been deported under Barack Obama, but Biden just let them all in. Nobody seemed to care. So the more that I was watching the story of this Se-Jun Park, who the Trump administration is accused of deporting, but he's self-deported after he was under threat of deportation because he chose not to take care of business. And I do understand. I totally understand that he had PTSD. He served in the 90s. There's some drug stuff. There's some gun stuff. Totally get it. But he had an opportunity under Joe Biden to take care of all that stuff and renew that green card, heck, even apply for citizenship. But he didn't do it. So that, my friends, is the rest of the story. 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. We'll return next. This is Red Eye Radio.
This morning's USDA Farm Report is brought to you by House Products. Tested, trusted, guaranteed since 1920.
Organic producers, did you recently receive a code by mail to participate in USDA's latest online organic survey? According to National Agricultural Statistics Service Administrator Joseph Parsons,
that's going on right now. Organic producers or those transitioning into certified organic production will receive a survey, a postcard to reply online. And we'll follow that up with a full questionnaire in early January, and then the deadline for response will be February 5th.
The organic survey survey is part of NASA's Census of Agriculture data series, with the last census-related organic survey conducted in 2021. More details about the organic survey are available online at www.nass.usda.gov/go/organic. I'm Ron Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
This report brought to you by Cenex Fuels and Lubes.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis here. Thank you for being here for this Friday morning. Gary and Eric, they do return on Sunday night, Monday morning. You do remember Kilmar Abrego Garcia, don't you?
A Maryland man thought to be wrongly deported.
Maryland man Kilmar Abrego Garcia.
A Maryland man. Media tried to call this guy a Maryland man. Remember all that?
Mistakenly deported.
The Maryland man at Maryland.
Over and over and over again, they called him.
Deported to a prison in
Maryland man.
They're not even trying to bring back a Maryland man.
He's a Maryland man.
Maryland man.
Kilmar Abrego Garcia was not a Maryland man. Kilmar Abrego Garcia was living in Maryland as an illegal alien, but he was also a member of MS-13 and Tren de Aragua, according to local authorities. He is also a human trafficker. He was caught here in Tennessee of smuggling a bunch of illegals. The Biden administration just let him go. That's all on video. You know, the previous segment I was talking about how you have all of these people on the left and in the media outraged over Donald Trump supposedly deporting this war veteran. He actually self-deported. I told you that whole story. But everybody's really upset about that guy being deported, but nobody's upset about the bad guys, the bad hombres that should have been deported but were not, like this guy. Kilmar Abrego Garcia, again, the world-famous Maryland man. You know, years ago, he was caught in Tennessee smuggling a bunch of illegals. The Biden administration at the time just let him go. He's a wife beater. His wife filed orders of protection against him. He is also accused of asking a 15-year-old for nude photos. Kilmar Abrego Garcia. So you remember all this, right? He was constantly called Maryland man, even though he was from El Salvador, came here. Law enforcement in Maryland said that he had hooked up with gangs like MS-13. Well, fast forward now to today. There's a big story in Tennessee because, of course, he was, and that's where I'm at in Tennessee, he was now released by an Obama judge. Yep. There was this whole storyline about where he was sent back to El Salvador, even though he wasn't supposed to be sent there because why? Well, there were other gangs that wanted to kill him because he was in gangs in El Salvador. But they kept saying he was not in a gang, the left and the media. So the media and the Democrats made this guy sort of the symbol of Donald Trump's illegal use of ICE to unjustly deport innocent migrants. But now again, this Obama-appointed judge has ordered Kilmar Abrego Garcia released. This is, at least for now, a loss for the Trump administration. The judge and Obama appointee, Paula Zinnes, said this, according to ABC News. Zinnes, in her order, found that there was no final order of removal from the government to deport Abrego Garcia from the United States, despite the Trump administration's repeated attempts to remove him. Because respondents have no statutory authority to remove Abrego Garcia to a third country absent a removal order, his removal cannot be considered reasonably foreseeable, imminent, or consistent with due process, she wrote in Thursday's order. So it seems like she's leaving the door open for the Trump administration to come back and do this, I guess, the right way. But I would have to ask this question. How is it possible when she says that there was no order of removal given, as this has been going on for a long time? I mean, it seems to me like that would be a pretty major, I don't know, screw up if there was no order of removal given. I don't understand why this Obama judge just let this guy go. So now Assistant Department of Homeland Security Secretary Tricia McLaughlin calling the judge's decision naked judicial activism by an Obama-appointed judge. This order, she says, lacks any valid legal basis, and we will continue to fight this tooth and nail in the courts. And they will. Kilmar Abrego Garcia should not be in this country.
Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios. Now, for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, here is Dan Mandis.
Appreciate you listening to Red Eye Radio. 866-90 Red Eye is the phone number, 866-907-3339. So I thought that this week, it was last night, yesterday, President Trump showed a great example of peace through strength. So I love that the president actually seized a Venezuelan oil tanker. Now, the reason why he did this, we're going to get into all of this. But the president, he decided that he was going to grab a Venezuelan oil tanker. The reason why he did it, because, you got some people out there that are saying, oh, the president, he's a strong man, all this crap. This oil tanker was actually helping Iran to fund terrorism, right? That's part of what is going on with this oil tanker. So the president was right to do what he did, and this is why Donald Trump is respected across the world. And by the way, the president is intimating or essentially saying that a ground offensive in Venezuela could be coming as well. But this is the president talking about how he had taken control of one of these ghost ships, an oil tanker from Venezuela.
It's been an interesting day from the standpoint of news. As you probably know, we've just seized a tanker on the coast of Venezuela. Yep. Large tanker, very large.
Good.
Largest one ever seized, actually. And other things are happening, so you'll be seeing that later, and you'll be talking about that later with some other people.
So that is President Trump, and we've been taking out their drug boats, which is good, and I have zero problem with that. And now we've seized this massive oil tanker out of Venezuela, and Venezuela and Iran were working together to sell oil from Venezuela on the black market. The president says, we'll probably just go ahead and keep the tanker and the boat. And it had somewhere around 1.8 million barrels of oil. And this particular tanker had been sanctioned by the United States because they say it involves an illicit oil shipping network that supports foreign terrorist organizations. I mean, listen, if Iran and Venezuela are involved, you know that it's going to bad things, right? I mean, basically, Venezuela has been working with Iran and Hezbollah in oil purchases and trades, skirting sanctions. They've been selling oil on the black market. We've sanctioned, actually, this particular oil tanker. Now, remember when Joe Biden was criticized, heavily criticized, for simply allowing Iran to sell oil again despite the sanctions placed on them by Donald Trump back in 2018. Remember that whole thing? Trump throws down the sanctions on Iran, and then he enforces them. Joe Biden comes in, and the big story was he looked the other way. Biden comes into office, looks the other way, and basically allows Iran to sell oil on the black market, and they made billions of dollars. That money eventually paved the way for Iran to pay for Hamas to invade Israel. Remember all that? Remember that storyline? And so what Donald Trump is doing is he is actually enforcing sanctions. And that's smart. That is how the president gets respect. That is how the president earns respect. So Donald Trump is sick of Venezuela and Iran and all of these other nations, all of these other terrorist nations, being able to fund terrorism. And so now he is going after these nations. Even Chuck Schumer didn't necessarily seem particularly outraged over this. Listen.
Do you disagree with President Trump's ultimate goal of regime change in Venezuela?
Look, the bottom line is President Trump throws out so many different things in so many different ways. You don't even know what the heck he's talking about.
Okay.
You know, obviously, if Maduro would just flee on his own, everyone would like that. But we don't know what the heck he's up to when he talks about that. So it's very, very, you cannot say, I endorse this, I endorse that, when Trump is all over the lot, not very specific, and very worrisome at how far he might escalate.
Do you know what's so funny? Chuck Schumer, refuses to give Donald Trump any credit for exhibiting a little peace through strength. Won't even give him just a smidge of credit. Just refuses. But I think Trump did the right thing. You know, other presidents have let Iran and Venezuela and other nations get away with skirting sanctions and bringing drugs into our country and funding terrorism for far too long. Because you know what happens? Do you know what happens when we allow other nations to fund terrorism, when we allow other nations to bring drugs into our country? People die. Americans die. And if there's anything that we've learned from Donald Trump, it's that he doesn't like Americans dying. He wants a safe America. Unlike Joe Biden and the Democrats, Donald Trump is getting things done. There's still things that he has to get done, but I think that he's got a lot of wins, and this is one of them. By the way, let's also remember that Venezuela sells a ton of oil to China. This boat, the Skipper, they called it, was on its way to Cuba, then to Asia. And by the way, this ship, just to let you know, they had falsified location data and fake identifiers. And again, they call them ghost ships, and they've got a bunch of them. Venezuela has a bunch of them. And so now the big question is, what's next? And Trump says, you know, basically what it seems like is this is only the beginning. This is like the appetizer. Who knows what's next? This is GB News out of London. And I love how they talk about this taking over of the Venezuelan oil ship.
This is really about sanctions busting, really, because the Venezuelan regime, of course, is illegally exporting oil, and it ends up in China. And so the United States basically is enforcing the sanctions that are in place. This is a very impressive military operation. It's American exceptionalism writ large here, and three cheers to President Trump, I think, for launching this kind of raid. We can't imagine, for example, Keir Starmer doing something like this.
No.
And so this is the United States, the world superpower, flexing its muscles on the world stage against a vicious, brutal communist tyrant. And that's a great thing to see, the United States actually taking action here. The United States really is standing up, I think, to one of the most odious regimes on the face of the earth. And if Maduro actually ends up being thrown out of office as a result of U.S. action, great. He's a dictator and a tyrant.
Now, just so you know, I'm not a big fan of regime change. I think it's pretty clear, though, that people of Venezuela don't like Nicolás Maduro. He actually shouldn't even be in office. And he actually lost the election. But the whole thing was, to quote Donald Trump, it was rigged. Let's say hello to Bill, who is calling from Los Angeles. Bill, you're on Red Eye Radio. Thanks for calling in. Go ahead.
Hey, Dan, earlier you wondered what affordability would have looked like under Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. And if you really want to see what that would look like, just take a look at my state, California. It's a model of what Democrat policies do to destroy affordability, starting with the $5 gasoline that because of restrictions on oil drilling and leasing here, skyrocketing home insurance if you're even lucky enough to find it, and skyrocketing auto insurance and healthcare premiums, much of which is traceable to the illegal alien population that's just overloading the systems.
Boy, Bill, you are absolutely right. And that insurance issue that you're talking about, my mother passed away. We had a townhouse in Glendora, if you know where that is, Glendora, California. We had a townhouse there, and it was a condo, and you know what's going on with condos out there. It was almost impossible to sell it. It took us, I think, about 9 months to finally get rid of it. So let me ask you this, Bill. When Scott Bessent said, I don't know if you saw this, but I was all over it, because I've lived in some pretty crappy states. I'm from California, and so I've lived in California. I've lived in Virginia. I've been all across the country. I've lived in Colorado, and now I live in Tennessee. So I've lived in my opinion, the best and the worst. But you probably, Bill, weren't surprised when Scott Bessent came out and he said, if you really want to talk about affordability, move to a red state, because red states, they are just cheaper. There's less regulation. There's more jobs. Here in Tennessee, we don't even have state income tax. Our gasoline right now, I mean, it's like I don't know what, $2.15 or something like that, a gallon of gas. So it is cheaper. You look at the Fox News, and I'm going to have to do this from memory, but Fox News did a thing where they talked about the most expensive states for gasoline. They talk about taxes, state taxes, and they talk about housing prices. And Bill, California was, I believe, at the top of the list. You had California on all these lists. You had California, you had Hawaii, you had the state of Washington, you had Illinois, I think was in. No Republican states, though, were at the top of these lists as far as more expensive, and California was right there. Do you believe, Bill, that if Gavin Newsom runs for president of the United States, do you think that he would win California?
Again, we have a lot of stupid people out here, a lot of stupid people. So it's possible, but I'm just hoping that the United States, which does not include California anymore because they just ignore federal law, I hope the rest of the United States is wise to what's going on here. And by the way, my auto insurance doubled last year, and I got a perfect driving record with a really picky company. And I called them and I said, what's going on here? And she said, okay, the problem is in California, you've got too many people who are underinsured or not insured, wink, wink, illegal aliens, and it's just driven up the premiums for the rest of us. And the same with the health care, because when I was on private Blue Cross 10 years ago, and I noticed my premium starting to go up and up and up. I called and I said, what's going on? And they said, it's called Obamacare. You can't put millions of poor people on a program because we're the ones providing for these people. It's the same private companies providing Medi-Cal and Medicaid. There's not some like government hospital or government auto insurance that provides this stuff. It's the private companies, and it's just forcing them to raise their rates.
Bill, I don't know how you do it, man. More power to you. Thanks for calling in to Red Eye. I could not go back to California. You folks in California, I don't know how you do it. Bill, thanks for calling in. Mary is in Detroit, listening to our great affiliate out there, WJR. Mary, thanks for calling in. Go ahead.
Yeah, I didn't appreciate the way Kristi Noem was treated in the Senate when they asked questions. I don't like the way they do that. I don't like the way they only get 5 minutes and then she can't respond to their question. She can't even correct them when they ask a question where the information they're asking her is incorrect. I think it's a lousy way they do that, and for the American people, for me, to sit here and watch that and know what the senators are up to, that the questions are not correct, that they're so rude to her. I mean, who's ever running the operation ought to say, look, we got to cut this out, no more of this. You're rude to the person. You don't get to ask any more questions. You ask a wrong question with the wrong information, sorry, your turn is over with. And if you don't let them respond to what you're asking to, sorry, you're going to shut up, Mr. Senator or Mrs. Senator, and you're going to let them give you an answer, whether you like it or not. I'm sick and tired of watching our government be run like this. I really am.
Well, Mary, I appreciate the call. I'm going to talk about that on the other side. But just to note, sadly, Republicans do it too. We'll return next on Red Eye Radio.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
Red Eye Radio, the phone number is 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. Bill had called from California. I'm sorry, Bill, but Bill had called from California. And I was trying to wipe the cobwebs off my brain at this late hour. I'm not usually on the air at this time. But I was telling him about Fox News. They did this segment about the states with the highest costs. And yeah, shocker, they are all blue states. California, you look at gas prices. The highest states, California, Hawaii, state of Washington, Nevada, and Oregon, all Democrat-run states, all highest gas prices in the nation. As far as housing goes, you've got Hawaii, you've got California, you've got Massachusetts, Washington, and the state of New York, all run by Democrats and all the most expensive. How about taxes, real quick? Hawaii, New York, Vermont, California, and Maine, all Democrat-run states, all the highest taxes in the nation. Just telling you, you want to save money? Move to a red state.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.